Hello, everyone. How have you been? Good morning, first of all. A warm welcome. A warm morning, Sunday morning. You have compromised your sleep to enter to join us live. So, thank you so much, first of all, for that. So, it's a good morning. So, why are we here? I'll tell that in a while. So, if you have any questions regarding the live, regarding the questions when the introduction is going on or when the explanation is going on, you can feel free to enter the comment sections and post your questions. We will be addressing that at the end or in the middle of the sessions when we get a break. So thank you so much. So we are organizing an online free event, Chennai Travelogue by an architect, as a part of celebration of the Madras Day. Why Madras Day is celebrated? It is celebrated on the remembering the city, considering the founding of Madras on August 22, 1639, almost 381 years back then. 381 years. Ha, yeah, such an old city, right? So, on behalf of Keyturns, we are organizing this event. So, what is Keyturns? Keyturns is an adventure, expert curated, and leisure thematic travel designer and an organizer for individuals, corporates, and students in nature offbeat, culture, heritage, spiritual wellness themes. And me, RJ Vaithee, I was being an RJ in Hello FM earlier, and I have been doing individual podcasts right now, also travel podcast for the key terms in the name en route. You can check it out in Spotify, Google Podcast, in any other platforms. A little marketing on the podcast. Don't worry, but I'm not going to take much of your time because I'm not going to be the speaker of the day. We have a special person to talk about the Madras Day, talk about many things. So it is Mr. Karthik Nachiappan. Please don't mind me, I'm going to refer notes. He has done a lot of interesting stuff too. So to talk about Mr. Karthik Nachiappan, I have to refer my notes. Even my invigilator did not care when I was doing back then in college. So Karthik Nachiappan is an architect and urbanist graduated from Architectural Association. He specializes on housing and urbanism and his practices established in Chennai in the name of Archivit Architecture. Please correct me if my pronunciation is wrong. Archivit focuses sustainable upcycling, eco-friendly architecture, and CSR projects while establishing a slow base of urban research on the topic of public realm, urban projects, informal utopia, and a new urbanism. He is an active member of Attiner and Wizard and has also written articles and journals on the topics of informality and housing issues. Travel is his passion and has given a vast exposure and an insight for appreciating and comprehending architecture of cities. Some of these suburban stations in Chennai was painted by his studios involving students and community. He's also actively involved in teaching as a guest lecturer, dealing with topics of urban environments. He's here with us to share his perspectives on the travelogue of Chennai, limiting to the aspects of tourism. So let us put our hands together to welcome, or maybe we cannot see you or we cannot hear you, but at least we can feel you, welcoming Mr. Karthik Nachiappan. So let us put our hands to welcome Mr. Karthik Nachiappan. When we are hosting shows in a stage, we tend to say this, the stage is all yours. But as we are now hosting Facebook Live, what I can say now is, Mr. Karthik, the screen is all yours. Please take it.
Thank you. Thank you, Vaidhi. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. So maybe just without delaying too much, we can just get into what we are here for today's session. So I would like to thank Keyturns for organizing this event on the eve of Madras Day. Of course, all of us know that the big day is kind of a week ahead, and already Chennai is witnessing a lot of good events over the past week and over the coming week as well. So today's session, we are going to discuss about the topic on relevance of travel in comprehending cities. So with over traveling different countries and witnessing different ways of social life and culture, so I am here given an opportunity to talk about what Chennai has in her a kind of potential asset to explore and what could be done in order to preserve or conserve it. So limiting my talk to the aspects of tourism. So I would like to start the session by introducing a terminology called as travel schooling. So some of you might have heard it. Just to give a insight about what travel schooling is, we as human beings have an inborn capacity to learn from the things around us. So especially from the world around us, but given a chance. So when we are given a chance to explore the world around us, we have an inborn curiosity that compels us to learn from it. So this is a widespread concept of what travel schooling is all about. And in short, we consider travel schooling to be learning outside the box. So based on this, we broadly categorize travel schooling into 9 different categories, which may even sub-branch into many other categories of tourism. So on a base scale, on a broader scale, we would like to talk about history, religious, industrial tourism, cultural, ecological, festival-based, view spots or viewing gallery-based, or a kind of ecological view spots, mobility-based travel, and food-based travel. So these are some of the broad categories according to us. We and this may even branch out into many other aspects of travel schooling. So learning inside the box is definitely not equal to learning outside the box. So going by other names like adventuring, road schooling, this basically travel schooling is a kind of a world schooling concept that combines two things. One is a self-directed learning process, which is then reinforced or enriched with active engagement with the world around us. So in the form of traveling, basically. So when there is always a self-directive learning process within us, which is actively engaged with the world around us, then it is kind of called as a concept of world schooling. So today here we are in order to present from our perspective the feature to talk about three different things. One is the importance of travel schooling, highlighting the aspects of tourism. What could we claim as Chennai's identity? And of course, revealing a small mind map, like a kind of mental imaging of a traveler. So Madras is a kind of city with magnificent distances. All of us know, right? The roads are long. Not only the city extends of roads are long, but there are a lot of private drives that are feasible within and outskirts of the city. Chennai has a lot of potentials to explore in terms of these roads, winding roads, alleys, historic districts, and so many to explore. And especially some of the parts in central Chennai that runs parallel to Mount Road are finely bordered with some good banyan trees. And of course, all these roads are rendered so beautiful in all aspects, especially if you look at it in the daylight, you could see the leaves glittering the reflection of sunlight. And of course, during the night, the moon throws a lattice of pattern work on the roadways. Isn't it such a beautiful phenomena what we have to observe? Of course, Chennai within her has a lot of potential ecological assets and of course historic and cultural assets to explore within. The first I would like to talk about in this ecological terms is the botanical garden and focusing on Madhavaram Botanical Garden, which is located in northern part of Chennai. So it serves a lot of purpose. The primary purpose it serves is to act as a green space in the greater urban context. So it's like a breathing space, green space in an urban context, and also as a kind of recreational or tourism spot, as a kind of well-being aspect. So because many people use it to walk for leisure and recreation. So it also plays an important role in well-being aspects of people. So when talking about this, on a similar line, a botanical garden that comes to my mind in my travel experience is Jerusalem Botanical Garden. This Jerusalem Botanical Garden, JBG, is being used for scientific inquiry, conservation, preservation, horticultural and botanical studies, and a lot more of educational activities that happen within the park. So they have gone a step further in terms of associating the Jerusalem Botanical Garden with the nearby schools and gardens to create kind of educational research programs involving the kids to learn on the topics of nature, art, and mental well-being. So school children are involved directly in the park-based learning or a kind of a learning outside in the environment to learn about botany and other plant species. Not to mention this Chennai Semmoli Punga, which is right located bang in the heart of the city, a 20-acre wide campus. This offers a kind of, once you move in, you kind of get a vast exposure of a scenic landscape, beautiful water bodies, and lush green garden. So isn't it something any citizen within a city, not only Chennai, any city wants to look upon? So this campus offers a wide varieties of 500 different types and species of plants and trees, apart from the existing trees that are around 100 years old within the campus itself, well preserved. And these are also having categories of medicinal and aromatic herbs. And this is a very good spot for children. Children love to play in this park. If you had been there, you would know. Children love to enjoy this park because they have a lot of interesting elements that engage the children within. A park has to be so. And of course, elders love going for walk inside the park because of its landscape around. And there is also an artificial waterfall, which looks almost realistic, and a lot of informal seating spaces and theaters kind of spaces, which invoke a kind of public conversation, kind of interaction with the social community around. $1 million ecological wealth in any city is its marshland reserve. So we are gifted to have Pallikarnai as a beautiful wetland reserve within our city. And thanks to a lot of non-profit organizations and institutional agencies that have played a very important role in preserving and conserving this landscape we have. Pallikarnai marshland is still a zone that is said to have a kind of lot of migratory species of birds, a large water containment zone, and of course, mangrove swamps and vegetation. So this has a potential to transform into one of the ecological hubs in a city if preserved and maintained and planned carefully and meticulously. On a similar planned context in terms of tourism, something that comes to my mind is the Sungai Buloh Wetland Reserve and Park, which is in Singapore. So the planned context kind of introduces 4 different trails within the wetland reserve, and the spatial element, the spatial content within the wetland reserve includes something called as a mud experience, a kind of down-to-earth experiences. You experience wetland in a more natural way. So there is something called as coastal broadwalk, there is a migratory bird trail, and there is a forest trail, and there is a coastal trail. So there are different ecological trails that has been, so the existing wetland reserve is planned carefully and it is organized in such a way that visitors can enjoy the nature. They can be along with the nature. So wetland reserve parks are something which has to be preserved in such a way that it engages people with the nature. Of course, I call this as a verdant wonderland, which is kind of sandwiched between the Bessie Coast and Adayar. So people in Chennai would consider this to be one of the beautiful spots to visit within the city. It is home to around different species of plants and animals. Of course, not to mention, this is a 100-hectare campus, though restricted in time and entry. There is a restriction in terms of time and entry, but still it houses a lot of varieties of plants and birds. And it is a home to around 450-year-old banyan tree, a Buddhist shrine, and a Zoroastrian temple depicting sculpture and a lot of symbolism. So it is one good ecological space to visit within the Chennai, which is still preserved. It maintains its serenity. Considering this place as a photographer's paradise, of course, one can never miss this Gindi National Park and IIT campus, which are next to each other, which are kind of rubbing shoulders with each other. So Gindi National Park and IIT campus are something considered to be a photographer's paradise, where you can see spotted deers, black bucks, a lot of other different species of plants and animals. And this campus is beautiful in terms of its vision. And of course, it is good experience during the first sun. One can never miss this vast expanse of 320 hectares of Nanmangalam Reserve Forest. Many of you might not have actually known it because there are a lot of suburbs that have been developed across it. But still, this is such a beautiful reserve that still is a house for different species of trees. And to mention, a lot of community afforestation projects happen in this reserve. So Chennai can be actually proud to have Nanmangalam Reserve Forest as one of their spaces, one of their pride, which actually improves the city's livability and, of course, improving a city's green quotient. Last but not the least, in terms of an ecological reserve, we need to mention Adayar Eco Park or Tolkapiyar Punga, which is managed by the Tamil Nadu state government. So it kinds of aims to restore the fragile ecosystem within the Adayar estuary and the creek. So it is a very good planned context running along the Adayar River, where one of it is a kind of creek planned with mangrove vegetations. So some of the earth that is excavated from this project are being used again in a sustainable way within the project to create some mounds, as you can look at the picture at the top. So some of the mounds are created where these mounds host a lot of mangrove vegetation as well as terrestrial plants. So these two kinds of interact with each other. And not only these kinds of mounds act only for supporting vegetation, but also act as a kind of sound barrier for the vehicular traffic. So these natural mounds act as sound barriers to the vehicular traffic in the outside. And of course, all these add to the serenity and the tranquility of the park. So right in the heart of the city, such a peaceful place to visit, such an ecological reserve to visit, and it has a guided tour within, though restricted in terms of days, but still it has a guided tour and trail within to experience such a beautiful reserve. And within the planned context, is there a kind of interactive learning space that facilitates a lot of public programs and activities, especially focusing on environments. So there are a lot of environmental related educational activities, workshops and programs that are being conducted. And there are a lot of eco-friendly building activities that are going there. So, and also this place grows medicinal as well as indigenous plant species. So in the middle of the city, such a good place to visit could be as a part of your travel. So not many people have already visited this place. So it is a good place to visit as such. So on similar context and lines, I could relate this to Stanley Park Ecology Society, which is in Vancouver. So which connects people, a lot of citizens of that city to nature every year through organizing public parks, public educational programs, and raising awareness of the natural reserve the city has. And of course, the respect to the natural world is attained through these awareness programs. So getting back to the central argument of learning outside the box. So in a kind of education system that is moving towards a standardization of education, something like this, an outside learning or a kind of engaging kids with the external environment is not something very existing phenomena, not something got into the curriculum or syllabus as of now. Taking an example of UDE school in Scandinavian countries, they study or they learn in both natural and cultural settings. Say, for example, in forests, camps, trails, farms, factories, galleries, theaters, etc. These are some of the places where they learn naturally. I can give you an example. Say, for example, a Danish teacher, a Danish geography teacher, kinds of trains her kids, asks her kids to go outside, take pictures of the city palace or museums, and come back. So what they do is, once they come back, they structurally organize all the pictures in terms of the origin of those places and history attached to it. So this is how they unlearn from photographs and travel, learning the history and geographical aspects of those particular places. So similar to this context, we have a lot of beautiful assets within our city that could actually be extended or created as a base for learning asset by creating awareness to these kids and engaging citizens. And of course, these help to conserve them to carry forward for the future legacies. And similar to ecology, there is one more thing that is very important is museum learning. So a lot of us consider museum as just a place of visit, taking photographs, coming back. But for me, museums are something more than what they do. So museums are kind of informal learning institutions. So it is a non-profit for them who doesn't know. So museums are a kind of a non-profit educational resource which kind of trains or wants to create interest to the audiences, which wants to informally educate those audiences, which means having this mission to educate audiences needs to be supported by the visitors and members. So most of us residing in the city needs to support these kinds of entities in terms of promoting education through museums. Of course, museums narrate a history. So according to me, museums are not only a place for collection of artifacts, but it is a lot more than that. So it kinds of creates a kind of informal conversation within. You can meet with the neighbors. You can share and discuss thoughts and opinions. It's a place where all the community comes together. So a kind of a community learning center. So when these research has also proven that engaging the community in terms of learning is more of a location based and more than an activity based, which means that this kind of location based learning plays a very important role in terms of carrying forward these community development activities. So well-preserved museum narrates not only history, but also kind of creates a cohesive community development. So every city has an embedded culture with it. So understanding those culture uh, importantly matters because we celebrate it. For us, we consider this urban neighborhood of Mylapore. So many of the people have already spoke about these urban districts of Mylapore. So for us, we consider this urban district of Mylapore as a kind of densely packed environment, which has different layers of cultural activities. It has transitional houses, traditional vending, and a house of boxed emotions. And not to mention, of course, it is a kind of urban insert that carries the legacies of Chennai's living streets. There are a lot of similarities between when you take different neighborhoods within Chennai. There are a lot of similarities that you can kind of create in terms of housing typologies. So the successful attempt, the success of these kind of housing typologies, may be an agraharam or maybe any other community, is the kind of the relationship of the house with the street that extends. So there is always an emotional attachment of these housing typologies with the street. Where you take any of these planned context within Chennai or the traditional neighborhoods of Mylapore or Triplicane, it has a kind of the house extends an emotion to the street. So this is a kind of legacy that could be carried forward, and the commonality in the housing typologies in different urban neighborhoods in Chennai. Can we ever imagine that the middle picture you see here is a kind of a streetscape or a house in Vietnam? Yes, of course, it is. So a kind of these kinds of transitional legacies of the street house relationship is being translated fluently in the context of Eastern world as well. So some of our legacies of street house relationship is being carried forward to the future generations and also being translated in Eastern context, something to be proud of for us. And the street towards the right is also a street in Vietnam. So it kinds of exhibits a similarity between the street context, what we look at in the kind of South Indian context. Uh, to celebrate festivals, occasions, and a lot of other activities, many cities try to close down their streets for public parades, for open markets, and kind of celebrating the occasions, right? So something exceptional in our city to mention is this Arumati Mover festival in Mylapore. So it is a kind of transformational atmosphere. In a day, the area, the neighborhood transforms into something else. It's kind of a celebration. So as Chennaites, we consider this to be more of an emotion or an emotional sensation. So are these little things in the context of culture that has to be preserved? And this also kinds of binds the community together throughout the year. So of course, this can be considered, these kinds of festivities and occasions can be considered to be one of the identities in a city. And not to mention, one of my good experiences to narrate is the Caribbean Carnival in London, which is celebrated in the area called as Notting Hill. This occurs every August in 2 days. So what happens is in these 2 days, the entire streetscape transforms into whole group of people celebrating their culture. So this kind of invites 2.5 million people every year. And of course, this is one of the largest street festivals in the world. And this is also significant Black British relationship festival. So this is hosted to kind of intensify the relationship between the Black British community. So we have a lot of local connects that has to be identified. So we do have things amongst us to celebrate that has a designated occasion. Then why not engrave it as a part of an identity? Right? We have so many things in common, so many things to celebrate, so many small little things that are indigenous to our community. Another important thing that we could not miss is the historic districts of Triplicate, especially during the occasion of Ramzan. So many of you might have gone into this location aspect. So this is a kind of location where, especially during the Ramzan Eve, a lot of non-Muslim communities like Gujaratis and Sindhis set up shops. So from halims to mutton kebabs, shawarmas to chicken grill, halwa to badam milk. So Triplicane offers a kind of mile walk of delicacies mentioned to be within or outside the occasion. So something on a foot trail could be not only it has history but also a foot trail. So worth to mention it is Triplicane offers a kind of tales of colonial past as well. Another interesting district sandwiched in the center of the city is Saukarpet. So every one of us know this is the economic powerhouse within the city and one of the oldest neighborhoods in Chennai's context. It's a very beautiful place which has architectural wonders, especially vintage houses, beautiful Jain temples, and a lot of narrow streets and lanes that has bustling shops ahead, jam-packed streets and shops ahead. So this is also a very important place for which offers a lot of food varieties, especially the North Indian food context. In these bustling streets is this economic powerhouse kind of shows a relationship of coexistence between the North Indian traders who kind of co-live and sell their wares along with the Tamil shopkeepers. So isn't it a wonderful place to visit? And not only it sells a wide variety starting to range from a fashionable clothing to a food trade. So you can find everything in and out in these historic districts. And of course, architecture is so beautiful and the streetscapes are so explicit to explore during the day. One can never miss the food carts within Chennai. Of course, this is a wonderful way to experience food in Chennai. Not to mention, I would consider these food carts as a kind of a social cohesion factor, a social binding factor to get people outdoors, on contrary to some of our fine dining experiences. So these are something worth to explore on. And to mention, streets of Chennai capture captivating meanings. These meanings are legacies to be passed forward, truly legacies to be passed forward. So all these comes back to a central question on, we do celebrate Madras Day, of course, Chennai with her potential, but do we celebrate Madras with her potential assets and ecology or aspects of tourism? Do we celebrate Madras to her fullest? Is something that we could ponder upon. Interestingly, Chennai with her potential ecology, history, local flavors, eclecticism, the urban content has something interesting in it. So just to mention the kind of urban lines of Chennai strikes hands with what we call in planning, one of the planning forms in Arthashastra, Kautilya's Arthashastra, which was around 2000 years before. So this planning methodology resembles a kind of plan form called as Karmuka. So which is related to a place where the site or the town is planned in form of a bow shape or a semicircular shape. So this kind of planning is relevant or existent only to cities that are edged by water bodies or probably lined by seashores. So isn't it something interesting to understand our content with relation to a kind of ancient planning context or forms? So our travel love has increased love for cities. Of course, when we start traveling to understand many things about cities, we start loving the cities and of course comprehending the cities. So there is an effort to rope in. So amongst us, there is an effort that has been taken to a kind of travel catalog in the form of a mental mapping. So we call this as a Chennai map. So a kind of mental imaging in the city that would like to foster to add things. So you can add many things. So a kind of how a kid makes a mental imaging of a city. So many things could be added so that it's more interactive and creates a palette of places to visit within the Chennai context. So similar to this, a kind of structured organization of culture-based and history-based trails would definitely help us understanding the different layers of cultural past as well as our historical and archaeological past. And never to mention, a structured organization of an ecological trail helps raise and create awareness amongst the citizens and kids to engage with these natural places and thus, of course, managing and helping them to conserve and preserve it for future generations. And our city offers a lot of public places to visit in terms of their location, which is very close to any of the metro or suburban stations. So we in a standard context, we call it as a mobility trail, which can be explored by using only a kind of public transport mechanism, which is also a form of sustainable form of tourism. So sustainability in tourism can be achieved by inducing a microeconomy to the context, as well as talking about mobility trails by using the public transport system within the city. So we are also rich in terms of connecting a lot of places with our public transport, in terms of creating a trail and exploring places. So I would like to end this session with kind of quote that was mentioned by Mr. Laurel Bladen Buffett. So we are meant to explore this earth like children do, unhindered by fear, propelled by curiosity, and with a sense of discovery. Allow yourself to see the world through new eyes, and we know that there are amazing adventures there for you. So no place in any city in the world is worthless. Every place or space has an inherent meaning. It will be revealed depending on the way we see it. So more we are aware, more possibility of institutions preserving and carrying forward for future generations. Thank you. So maybe if we have any type questions, Vaidhi, we can just take over.
That was fantastic. Lot of inputs. I was seeing as if I'm seeing a new city. Okay, cool. Is this Chennai? Because that is how the explanations that you gave about the ecological and the travel schooling and the Chennai's mapping, everything was really fantastic. And thank you so much for such a brief explanation, such a detailed explanations about our own city. So I have questions. Generally curated trips are better to know any place better. But do travelers prefer curated trips, guided trips, or they go on their own? So why curated trips are not so much preferred?
Of course, curated trips are not much preferred because the awareness is not created in a context. Of course, many cities in India are still now having guided or curated trips. It is starting to see it is in a naive stage which is still being developed. So maybe in the future generation, we can have, when we start raising awareness of what are the assets, potential assets we have and its importance, then probably people might want to know what is in it. So when that kind of awareness is created, when people want to know, these kinds of curated trips will definitely have its own time.
Great. Okay. So you were talking about the travel schooling, right? So in this present curriculum in our country or in our state, how do we bring the travel education into the present existing curriculum?
Okay, so it is not a mandate that the school has to be outside. Of course, we eventually, from our historical concept, we had a kind of outdoor learning. We had Gurukulam concept only. So we started with it. So there is nothing new that has to be introduced. But eventually, this concept of Mekele's system of education has been infiltrated for the past 150 to 160 years. This still has a choice of introducing travel as a part of curriculum, not as a complete one. So we still have educational tourism that happens in schools, colleges. It happens as a part, but it is not still an educative tourism. It is not a kind. It is not. It doesn't foster education or it doesn't foster knowledge. Knowledge is always wealth. So when people start understanding knowledge is wealth, then probably these kinds of things can be added as a part of syllabus or curriculum. Maybe in a small portion, a small dosage of it will definitely make a lot of difference.
Nowadays, parents actually they prefer confining their kids inside the home. So considering the parents, how do we accomplish the travel schooling, or how do we make them believe that this is something beyond, I mean, something out of the box, something more in detail about the education? How do we convince the parents to accomplish this?
Of course, when it comes to our society and kind of these when it comes to our society, travel is something related to more concerned on safety when it comes to
Yeah.
parents. Kids வந்து சேஃபா இருப்பாங்களா அப்படின்றதுனா first question that comes to their mind. So when we start kind of engraving in their mind these kinds of curated trips are kind in terms of safe. In not only it promotes education but also gives you that safety and security in learning, then probably people might start, maybe the next generation of parents might start accepting this as a part of learning focus.
Okay. So coming to the local dinings, you were showing some foods. Already the lips started smacking. We are now currently in a lockdown situation where we cannot go and explore and consume those kinds of foods. Anyway, so locals generally love dining, right? So do you think the public and travel places must have more outlets, more food spaces as much as possible, connecting with the
Okay,
local
so
foods?
this answers to the question of planning the public spaces. So some of our public spaces are being planned and some are kind of unplanned. It's informal. It's eventually created over the years. So if Marina எடுத்துக்கிட்டீங்கன்னா, it is kind of a planned context. It still has kind of informal carts within it. So some of the spaces are not planned. So when it comes to aspects of tourism, when public or people want to enjoy the local cuisine or food or flavors, of course, some of these fine dinings or maybe these local carts can be planned in and around these public spaces to create a kind of a bonding with our local cuisines and flavors. So it is a mandate for these public spaces to host such places so that the tourists, especially the tourists, enjoy the local flavors.
Especially places like Chennai, every place have their own cultural art forms. Uh, Other than from, normal practices, arts differ from places to places, and considering Chennai, they have their own traditional art forms. So, can travel enhance this traditional arts? Because nowadays we are going more into westernization. It's okay, it's cool, but how to enhance traditional arts through travel? Is there any possibility?
There are a lot of when we talk about art, there are two things. One is traditional art forms, which is already existing to promote it. Say in terms of performing arts,
Yeah,
when we take our context, we have Mailatam, Tappatam, or
exactly.
Ragatam. There are few traditional Tamil Nadu elements that happens, and we have also seen processions that happened in Chennai a couple of years back, and that's been still happening to promote culture and heritage of Tamil Nadu. So when it comes to these aspects of traditional arts and performing arts, of course, we can create all these occasions are created. It's man-made, right? So we only create these occasions. So many cities, like the ones I showed also, there are a lot of cities which celebrate occasion to promote their in terms of carnivals or in terms of festives. So they invite a lot of people around the world to get into that local art culture. So it can be a planned context of inviting people, like our Dubai 2020 Expo. It is a planned context, not in terms of art, but still it is an occasion that invites people around the world. So something in terms of culture can be planned to invite people around the world to experience traditional art forms. And in terms of contemporary art, of course, museums and galleries or walk towards museums and galleries might kind of help appreciating art in a more positive terms.
Great. So that was a nice answer for that. Nice solution. So I think that is it from my side based upon the questions. If you like to add something to this, or let me see. Let me check the group if they have any questions left over. I think that is the questions are that's it from my side. If you would like to add something, some extra points on that.
None. So probably just to say that the travel schooling concept is still at a naive stage in many countries. Of course, the Scandinavian countries have explored to its fullest potential. So almost 50, 60, it's become 60-40 in terms of learning outdoors, 40 inside the classroom or a kind of workspace, and 60 outside. So eventually in other countries around the world, they would eventually start coming to this context. So learning outside is the best way to learn, and combined with the knowledge with the books that has been created with the existing education system, both together works in a better way. So we have a lot of spaces, a lot of places within every city to understand its ecology, botany, horticulture, agricultural and plant sciences. We have museums, we have a lot of historical districts to understand the layers of cultures, history, and a lot of things. So the only thing we need to do is not sit back, just go and start exploring whenever possible.
That's great. When travel schooling comes into existence, definitely I'm going to get back into school. Something at least I take a course. It excites me. So I think that is it from my side. Thank you so much, Mr. Karthik, for spending your time with us, for sharing a lot of details about the Chennai. It is like seeing the Chennai city something new. Chennai city is like something new to me. Like Rajini saying, "Oh, is this Chennai? Cool." That is how I'm seeing Chennai right now. So thank you so much for that. Thank you for your detailed explanations, for so much inputs comparing Chennai with other cities in the world. So that's great. And my our audience, thank you so much. Joining in a Sunday morning is actually not so easy. You have to take a lot of effort and interest to join on a Sunday morning. So thank you so much for that. And key turns we will be coming up with new contents, more engaging contents, and a lot of updates are coming up soon. So stay tuned in our Facebook live, in our Facebook channel and other social media platforms to know more about the keytons, to know more about our events, upcoming events, and the other
Alert from
travel
system is over.
that we are
Low
going to
battery.
plan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vaidhi,
Alert
and
from
thank you,
Apple
Keaton's
battery
team.
monitor. Low battery.